You did so well.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Decoupling Drupal Install Profiles with Gatsby. Today we're going to redundantly talk about GatsbyJS. We're going to be talking about how we switched MediaCurrent.com to Gatsby. And then also decoupling using the Rain profile and why using install profiles is pretty good. Then we're going to talk a little bit about issues with decoupling. There's some seats up here, guys, if you want. It's a very, what's the word I'm looking for on this talk?
Compact.
Informal, more of a town hall kind of thing, you know? Me and Obama, we do those in all town halls.
Who's more eloquent?
We're in the Bay Area, so a little earthquake on the projector's good. All right, I am Mark Casias. I'm a senior Drupal developer at MediaCurrent. We have a podcast called Open Waters Podcast. If you are so inclined to listen to it, we're entertaining. A little bit about the company I work for. I work for MediaCurrent. We are a completely distributed company, full-service digital agency that implements. You can read that. I really don't know why they make me read that all the time, but they do. We're a really great place to work. I love it. We're actually hiring all sorts of roles. If you're interested and if you're looking, we're completely distributed, and we work on some great stuff. So if you're interested in a fun, challenging job, I recommend going to MediaCurrent.com/jobs. Should know that. So let's first talk about what GatsbyJS is. All right, this thread. We've had how many talks this weekend about Gatsby already? I don't think I'm going to tell you anything new about it. It's a great React-based site generator, not necessarily a site generator, but it is a thing that makes your site go really fast. It's very performant because since it is pre-built and there's no having to talk to the different databases and different file systems. It's all in one system. It's very reliable because, once again, it's a single application, very secure. You don't have any way for them to hack into your data. Well, they probably could if they tried, but depending, don't have to worry about database inflections or JavaScript stuff like that. And then the hosting is very easy to do because you can put it on an S3, you can put it into Netlify, you can put it pretty much anywhere because it's already a pre-built app, and you don't have to worry about PHP configurations and database configurations and all that stuff. So that's why I like Gatsby. I guess that's the whole point of this, is why do I care about Gatsby? I've been using it for a little over a year now and really, really do enjoy it. Moving on to the second thing, we're talking about MediaCurrent.com. That's our website that was released in Gatsby at the beginning of September. It looks very cool. It's a very neat design, very easy design that we use kind of atomic component design before. But before we actually put it in Jekyll. Jekyll is a Ruby-based site generator that I hate. It was kind of forced upon me. It's Twig-based, which is nice, I guess. But however, in order to publish, you can't just pull the information from Drupal. You actually have to massage your data. So I had to write a module that moved all the different blog posts and every single node that was being published into this flat file, and then commit it into the GitHub repo. And then the GitHub repo would send a thing to Netlify to rebuild it. And it was just a mess. Just a mess of commits. There had to have been about, in the year and a half that we had it in Jekyll, maybe 5,000 commits, and most of them were search data.json, because every time that updated for the search on a cron, it would recommit that same file. Half the time, there wasn't a change. Could I have done it better? Probably, but I didn't. And we also couldn't use our regular system. We actually had to use GitLab because Bitbucket didn't really have, at the time, an API where you can actually push commits into, while GitLab really does. So we had Pantheon as our backend for Drupal, which we still do, which is a separate service altogether. Then we would push the file into GitLab, and then GitLab would trigger something to go to Netlify to do the final build. I love this. This is actually how it worked because I had to figure out how to do development locally to make sure everything worked, and then push it up to the different testing things so other people could test betas and stuff like that. And as you can see, it's a big, fun thing to try to manage. Especially if you're trying to push something from your beta site, or your public site to the beta site. If you push it the wrong way, you'd lose all the public site stuff. And that only happened once. Not sure why I did that slide again. Sorry, folks. All right. So anyway, now I know why. Because now it is in Gatsby, and this is what the Gatsby site looks like. It's the exact same, just a lot easier to publish and easier to work with because we did it in Gatsby. So decoupling with a Rain install profile, or really any install profile. I know you guys have a really nice one, the Buena. That's hat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Visa.
Yes, exactly. There are all sorts of different ones. Media Current, we have our Rain install profile. We actually did at DrupalCon, you may have seen this. This is a Gatsby Rain demo that we put out there. We had, actually, if you look on the website, it actually has rain coming down. It's a really nice video, but that doesn't really capture it in screenshots. But it's a real nice, easy site that we built to kind of display it. Rain library is very neat. It's a fully functional distribution installation profile. It has various content types that you can use, turn on, turn off, if you want to use them. And it has a very nice admin interface called the Rain admin interface, very originally called. And then it has all these various paragraphs that are already pre-built for you, so you don't have to worry about configuring anything like updating it. Of course, you can change them if you want, but then that's up to you. And what's good about that is when you're adding stuff to a page or something like that, you already have this nice user interface to add a breaker, add a different card or a row of cards, however you want to work with it. Really nice interface to work on that. Then you turn around and you go into your Gatsby, and then you can create components based on those cards already, or based on those paragraphs already. So you don't have to regenerate them. They're already out there and available to you. You just have to change it to your own style, however you want your Gatsby interface to work with. And the same with the Buena. It actually they have their own starter kit as well that has pre-built component-themed stuff for you. Some of the issues I discovered working with different installation profiles and basically Gatsby Drupal interfaces altogether. I am flying through this, by the way. Sorry, not really. GraphQL has a minimal set of logic. So whenever you are interfacing between Drupal and Gatsby, basically what that does is it takes the JSON API, or you can use the GraphQL schema itself, and generates a GraphQL schema, which then is how it pulls in the data and takes out the data. Instead of, like I had to do, where I had to regenerate the content into a flat file that then is read by the system, basically pushing that data in there, Gatsby will go out and pull the stuff in, however, with a minimal amount of data. There are a few arguments that you can use in GraphQL in certain spaces. There are places where you can't use arguments at all or variables at all, like if you're using the GraphQL or the static queries inside to like pull data inside of a component, which is a way to do that. But you can actually pull data using arguments, but it's very limited on what you do. So then we pulled in also inline fragments, because with paragraphs, you have a set of data that you can call in GraphQL, and it expects certain fields. Well, if those fields aren't there, and you call that, it's going to fail on you, and fail very hard on you. So then you can actually have fragments that will pull in different content or different fields based on the type of data that you're presenting it. So in this instance, we have a breaker, a GraphQL fragment that pulls in the different fields for the breaker, But also down lower, we have actually other paragraphs that are stuffed in there, and we can actually reference those things based on whether or not they're what the type of paragraph that they are. And then if you look at the 2-row fragment, it kind of does the same thing. One thing that Gatsby does really well is retrofits your images for you, so they're once again local. And you can actually pull in all the information, the source information, and the resized based on what your query is. It will actually generate something that's 200 pixels instead of the thousands of pixels that you have, so it makes your site more performant as well. And then again, like I said, this is actually how the page works in our site. Any page is just a series of paragraphs. So we just go ahead and have we call in the field that holds all the paragraphs and says, okay, is it a banner fragment or is it a banner? Okay, give me the banner fragment or a landing or whichever it is. And then you can break those off into separate files, or you can have one gigantic file depending on how you want to do that. How do you implement it? Per file or?
Yeah, per file.
Yeah. For some reason, I went with one big file. I'm not sure why.
And another benefit is whenever you create the exported fragment, you don't have to import on your template out of the boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Exactly. That's one thing that Gatsby does really well also. You create a fragment, you tag something as a fragment, and export it into the system, and it will pick it up anywhere, which is really nice. So you don't have to worry about where you place it. Here's another place where we're using a case study card fragment. Closer shot? I don't know why I'm doing half these slides, sorry. Another problem that I have is sometimes nested paragraphs. So say you have a page that has a bunch of different paragraphs, but then you have a paragraph inside of a paragraph. I found a problem where if the paragraph inside of a paragraph has the option of being two different paragraphs, you could possibly fail on it. It has a problem of not hydrating properly, so if you're looking for something, it doesn't actually work. So just be something to be wary of. Usually you want your paragraphs inside of a paragraph to be on their own field, which makes your life a little bit easier. Empty fragments. So the point of this is, if you have a fragment that makes a call to a paragraph that doesn't have any content in, say, field title, it will not know what to do with that and then fail on you. So what we like to do is we actually create a test page that just auto-populates every single paragraph type into a test page, and then in our build, not build out that test page. We have a very specific one that we do to not build out. And then that way we have the possibility of every single thing hydrating in and no queries failing on you. However, also you don't have to see a test page, because who wants to see a test page? Let me get there. Jesus created another functionality where if it comes up to a null query, it will actually manually create an empty string fragment on that. And the only reason I don't ever implement that, I'm just saying, is because if for some reason you're expecting an object and you've auto-created a string, you're going to get a failure on that. So you can do both techniques. It works very well. I've dealt with it, but then I ran into a place where it was actually a body, and you're expecting body.value,
The process value.
and then that actually dies out on you. So anyway,
You can do the graph field customization and create a schema for you. But the benefit of using Gatsby and JSONAPI is introspect the system and create all those me fields in the fly for you. So you can force that if you want to. But there's a lot of work you need to do without. What you just mentioned, it's just simple. It's great. Dummy content.
yeah, dummy content, and then in the Rain install profile, we actually have where it generates that test page automatically using YAML content, which is really nice. Images in text field. Oh, this one's so much fun, because there are so many different ways that you can do this. So like I said, Gatsby, the whole point of Gatsby is that it just pulls in all your information, pulls in all your files, and then generates the text field. Well, your text field, your body fields, don't have a reference to where those images actually are. They have it based on Drupal. That's what they output, based on Drupal. So you actually have to create something where you either, in this instance, we actually take the source, we use it using a React HTML transformer, and say, okay, hey, parse the content, and if you see an image that starts with the source of slash, then we want to obviously have that go to our publishing site, which is publish.mediacurrent.com, and then convert that element to what it needs to be. There's another wet route, and then there's the actual thing that processes it, where it takes out the text and then parses it out. The props.txt is just if you pass it in as a property in the React property, or you can put it in as child element, which sometimes works. And actually, I think that's what we do all the time now anyway. But you always have that option of either passing it in as a parameter or passing it in the opening and closing text of the data. There is also a way of, and then there's also, these guys created the Toast editor, which actually creates Markdown for you properly, which is really great as well, but I've not had a chance to implement it, but I know it's out there. So that's another great option for you to work with. Nope, that's not what I want. There's another thing that I've tried that kind of works, where it takes this exact same kind of code, and actually, since in the body text, it always says what the entity ID of the media entity that you're putting in is there, and then you can actually grab that file from where Gatsby pulled it down in your source folders, which is great except for one thing. If you have somebody that puts in a image with spaces in it, you can add it, and then the browser smartly thinks of a space as %20 and then puts that in there. Well, Gatsby names that file with %20, and then the browser expects %20 to actually be a space instead, so it can never find that file. It was a very interesting bug, and something that I've raised up with the Drupal, the source Drupal people, on making sure that, transliteration, obviously you kind of want to have that in your site anyway, but you can't. There are some times where it just doesn't work, and for some reason the transliteration module in Drupal 8 doesn't exist, so it doesn't ever rename files like that. So you get a lot of different files with the spaces in there, which I didn't realize until I ran into that problem. However, renaming it and pushing off to the source, the only reason that I don't like this solution, I don't think it's that elegant, is because now Gatsby has to call something else instead of itself. So now you're adding outside sources and whatnot, and that's not as fun, or not as performant, I guess is the best way to say that. Okay, build time. So MediaCurrent.com has a lot of content on it, and a lot of images, a very, very robust site. I'm not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying. However, so the build times on our site are right around 16 minutes. For our site. Every time you make a change, you have to rebuild the site, the entire thing. It doesn't do progressive. They're working on it at Gatsby, but it doesn't happen now. Netlify, which is our final host, times out their builds at 15 minutes. So I am exactly 1 minute over being able to automatically do this myself. So then we use Jenkins. What we do, you can use Circle CI, whatever your automated processes are, to build the site in the third party, and then push up the the public folder, which is the generated content, up to Netlify for you. It's pretty easy. I know that Gatsby is working on a solution where you can actually start doing preview builds and incremental builds, but that is not here yet. I'm actually working with the preview functionality I'm helping that out with the preview functionality, and we're trying to get that implemented on MediaCurrent.com so that your editors can go in there and do the work and then see exactly what they're doing, as opposed to right now they just see the builds of the content in the raw form. You could also take those things and make them twig interfaces, and then theme them out properly. You could do that, but then why not just use Drupal then? In my opinion.
Well, you said why earlier.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Here's a bunch of different resources that are I like the modules. The JSON API module is now in core. The GraphQL module is not in core, but it's come a long way. I really do enjoy it. However, one thing I want to say is if you start with JSON API, doing all your queries and everything like that, don't switch. Some people will say, you should use GraphQL. Well, then all your queries are going to have to be rewritten. Things are named completely different for some reason that I don't know.
Does preview work with the GraphQL data source, only JSON API?
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, and also preview only works on GitHub. You can't use Bitbucket or anything else. You have to use GitHub, which a lot of people use. So
Preview. So you're saying Gatsby's preview?
Gatsby has a preview service now.
Okay.
And the other thing is they're monetizing that, so it's not open source and it's not free.
Talking about bills, Netlify is going to start charging per bill time. So it's free until you, consume a certain amount of minutes. Bill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of you were wasting a lot of time.
Hey! I stopped. I went somewhere else. It was actually really frustrating when it happened. It's really nice when you have something that's short and sweet, like our Gatsby Rain demo. It takes a minute to build because it's only 2 pages and only a couple of images. And literally, the thing that takes forever is the repulling of all the images that it has to. It will. There's a caching system where it will hold them, but it still has to say, "Is that there? Okay, cool. Is that there? 5,000 times. Are you there? Okay, good."
So what don't you like about building with Jenkins? Why are you unhappy? Just another system?
Because it's just another system that you have to maintain, and it's really interesting. Sometimes if you're doing a development build, the server on Pantheon, on your multi-dev sites, they'll go to sleep. So when Jenkins pings it and says, "Hey, I want to start this build," it takes a while for it to spin up, and it returns to 504. And then your build fails, so you have to go in there and restart it and make sure that everything's up and running first, and so you can't just have it happen like that.
So you couldn't have like a cached API sitting someplace that it could
that's the whole point of the development. I'm just saying,
Sure, right.
So publish.mediacurrent.com is fully functional, always on, and everything like that. But the develop sites, so whenever I push our develop branch to test something on beta, which is what it's based on, it occasionally fails.
Yeah.
So
it just feels like there's like a use case in there. You said this was town hall, so I'm
yeah. No.
It feels like there's a use case in there for cache tags and development builds.
Yeah, that wouldn't
and
be
an
bad.
API.
Yeah, what you can probably do is, you can cache in the final result, all the pre-processed images, put it into a bucket, and then next time you run the build, you go fetch the whole caching system. But then you need to implement this multi-step build process.
Yeah.
You can also lock the GraphQL, the GraphQL definition to avoid Gatsby, introspecting and generating every single time there's a plugin for that, like locks the GraphQL definition and saves you some time. And there's another, I think it's Locky.js or something like that, which is a database in memory that allows you to make your build faster. So there's a lot of things, but it's way too many pieces to figure out.
Well, and that's the thing. It's a matter of how much do you want to throw on there and whatnot. TUI editor we talked about. Build hooks is a really neat module that's available that you can actually trigger things in the interface. Like I talk about how most of my builds are triggered by commits to the repo. Those are how all my builds are triggered. Our editor doesn't mess with code at all. She just does the user interface, or none of them do. So there's actually a thing with a button that they can press saying, "Okay, please trigger a development build," or "Please trigger a master build and redo it." You can actually set it up so that every time you save a piece of content, it triggers a build. Or you do it make a bunch of changes. Hopefully with preview after, when preview gets working, you can preview all the changes and say, "Okay, this is great, ship it, send it to press."
Has anybody talked about a timeline for preview?
Second half of 2020. It's pretty far along. We got it functioning a little bit. It's not ready for prime time, I guess is the best way to say that. It opens an iframe for you and all sorts of stuff. some of the plugins, Gatsby plugins, and this is actually an old list, but Gatsby Source Drupal is certainly the first one that you want. That's the one that creates the Drupal using JSON API, or you can actually have it trigger off of any JSON API, however path you want to do it. In Gatsby, there is the GraphQL one already, so if you're using the GraphQL module instead, you can use that. Gatsby Remark Drupal is actually something Jesus there built as well, right?
That's for processing the images within the body fields.
Exactly. Transform Remark is actually something that also reprocesses all the markdown in your file. Gatsby plugin Sharp and Remark Images regenerates the images, so you can actually have like very nice responsive breakpoints for you to use. And then Gatsby plugin React Helmet is how you push all this stuff into the header, and so you can add third-party JavaScript and whatnot. Something that I found very interesting we have a service called Acquia Lift, and it has to do some stuff after the site is generated. So it waits until you get the browser to say, okay, content is ready, DOM content loaded is the thing. However, that's done before even Gatsby loads, because all that, basically the HTML that's loaded into your site is a div with an ID and a JavaScript saying, hey, let's start a React app in this div ID. And then everything else is populated on that. So if you're waiting for DOM content load, it doesn't work. So you have to actually use a second way to get that information in there. So when you work, short story, kind of long, if you're working with JavaScript, third-party JavaScripts, you got to make sure how they actually implement their stuff. Because if they don't implement their stuff, or it's not like a regular browser acts, because we're actually looking at a React app, which loads after the browser is done. And you're never going to get DOM content loaded again, which was really hard to figure out. For me anyway. Somebody else probably looked at it and said, yeah, that's fine. But, and yeah, I think that's my last slide. Yeah, all right. Any questions, comments? Yes.
That seems to be a very short list of issues that you discovered. I was wondering, is that really all that
Yeah.
you had to deal with? How about search engine optimization and accessibility?
Susan, say it one more time.
How about making sure that the site is search engine optimized and has all the accessibility features that Drupal has?
Well, so that's actually done by the front-end design team, and then you're outputting semantic HTML, and you're doing all that stuff in your theming layer on that. That's actually pretty much every single website should be looking at that stuff. We actually went through a Lighthouse test this week. They did it while I was gone, so thanks. But they did it to see where we were, where our scores were with Lighthouse and accessibility and all that stuff. That's stuff that should be our front-end engineers took care of. Since we're using components like that, React is a component-based system. We have the small molecules of information that we have that we can test, and we can run tests against those, and then add them into the bigger molecules and stuff like that. So SEO, that's one of the things that React Helmet does, is make sure your meta tags are hydrating properly into the header tag, because that's where they expect it to be. And that's one of the things that is part of, is making sure that all your meta is correct. So, great question.
It's also worth noting that the Gatsby community has made a commitment to both of those that's stated on their website. Do you feel like they're doing a pretty good job?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Accessibility, I mean, to me, it's very, very important, but it's also very easy if you're thinking about it. So as long as you're thinking about it, it's easy to do. It's those people that don't think about it and then don't bother with it, in my opinion.
And by think about it, you mean have design talent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Design the experience.
So, just to be an obnoxious devil's advocate, and I'm really curious, for like a medium-sized, fairly low-traffic site, what does this really get you versus just Drupal?
There's a lot of speed involved in that. If you have a little bit of content, actually a medium, low-traffic site is perfect for Gatsby, because it's just up there and done, and it's very secure. You can turn off all the other servers. You don't have to worry about database layer. You don't have to worry about anything else. You just put the Gatsby site up up on an S3 if you want, and it'll just run there forever.
But you still have the database, right? You're
Sure,
pulling it from
but
the
you can,
Drupal
but
backend.
you can turn it off, and that's actually the Decoupled Days site is a Gatsby site, and we turn off the Pantheon instance after we're done populating, and then we just have Netlify, which is 100% free as opposed to possibly charged, and then it's a super fast site as
But you
well.
still have to turn it back on every time a content author wants to make a change.
Sure. So next year we're going to turn it back on, and we're going to redesign the site and redo it all as well. But then once we're done with it, we don't have to think about it again.
At the same time, that Drupal server can be behind a firewall, and only people entering content will be able to access that. Only content editors and either Netlify or your build system who's going to connect to pull the data, to fetch the data. So it's, again, the same way last time was the Drupal get-on. Our solution, instead of fighting for composer update, is to shut down the Drupal servers. Wait until the next week when everyone so called down and update it.
Yeah.
To me, that point deserves a huge round of applause because that's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about until after they've gone through the experience of something like Drupal getting. And just to be able to have your site there and running and static, there's a lot of magic in that.
Unhackable Drupal.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. There's a use case that we have that you might also be interested in, or somebody else might be interested in. There's been a long line of things like multi-site and domain access, and so on and on and on, trying to deal with similar or the same content being distributed across different URLs. And we have an interesting use case right now where we're expecting hundreds of sites to be running very, very similar content with a different brand. It's a university project, a different brand, and some slightly different information in places. So we handle all of that with a single code base, domain-specific call and an API. So basically, single Drupal instance, single behind the firewall, single project on a server if we find the right infrastructure for it, and everything runs just with builds all of the different sites just with an API call.
So it's basically one single multi-site, one single Gatsby theme, and from there you can spin up as many sites as you
It's
want.
not even multi-site.
Or domain.
Yeah.
Not
Actually,
even-
one thing that I did with the Decoupled Day site is I'm using the same Drupal instance, same content. The only difference is I'm using tagging to decide which content we're actually showing.
Exactly.
That's all we're doing for multi-site is just a tag, which there are pros and cons to that. That may not be the best way to do it. It could, but then also I could just wipe out the entire thing and start fresh and be just as fine.
And you can make granular changes
Yeah.
according to tags, which is
Another
pretty
benefit
powerful.
of Gatsby is how, you have a Drupal site or a WordPress site or whatever, you can use, you can keep using those for content entry, and you can standardize the look and feel for your different sites. So you can have the same look and feel site, and the source will be Drupal, will be WordPress, or Airtable, or Google Spreadsheet.
Yeah. The beauty of this is Drupal is a great content management system. I'm never going to suggest that we get rid of it. And Gatsby is a great display engine. And you use the best of both worlds, because I'm not going to lie, Drupal's display engine's not that great. It's not horrible, but it's not that great. Same with WordPress, same with, Contentful or Contentful. I always want to call it Contenta, and I know that's a Drupal thing, but, so you use your best tools. Forms and registrations and stuff like that, you actually use a third-party service that specifies in that. We use Pardot for all our forms. That just makes our lives easier because it takes care of sorting out the spam and whatnot. And there are other ones that you can use as well.
What do you think, just to throw one out, we're currently going down the direction from all of these different sites. There's only like 5 forms per site, they're each identical. And we're just doing an API, I'm not expert enough to say whether it's a post or not, but I believe it's a post of the form content to the to Drupal.
Yeah, that's fine.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We've got a captcha in front of it.
But
And,
are you sending back to Drupal?
yes,
That means your Drupal should be alive.
right.
You can do the way we solve that. It's either going directly to an external server, like CRM or external service, or just create a serverless or cloud function
Okay.
and process the payload there. And from there, you can decide to send it whatever you want to. Either
Sure.
or consume from there or just connect to an external API.
Got it.
and then you
Nice.
don't have your Drupal site.
Can be gone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely.
So once the progressive build is part of Gatsby, it will work like hashtags, like if I update an article, only that article will be rebuilt?
Correct.
Do you know the timelines of that?
Later in 2020. It's definitely something that they're like I said, they're close, but it's not ready for prime time, and they are trying to do like 7 different big projects at the same time. So
As of today, Gatsby is probably not a great use case. Like if you have a news and publishing site, it needs to be updated like probably every few minutes or something.
Your
Until
site
we
is
have that
updated
feature.
every 5 minutes.
yeah, that's actually one of our clients is a newspaper, and we're talking about putting them to Gatsby, and we definitely could not do that unless there's an incremental build
Yeah.
because they publish. Now, granted, a lot of their articles release at midnight to coincide with the paper itself, but then you have the quick news that you obviously want to have as well.
You can probably render 2 different sites, one for the full content and
That's-
another one for the news.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was thinking. You have it that's something that pings. It's a React app, so you can absolutely have full functionality of something else inside of it as
Yeah,
well.
because you have like 10-year-old articles which are perfect for static content. Nobody's going to update
Right.
10-year-old articles, right? Like, it's probably the real-time news that's being updated, but once it's published,
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that idea. I think I'm going to do a proof of concept on that because that's
Yes.
that would be neat. Yeah.
you can help.
Yeah.
So I have a question about preview. When you're talking about preview, are you talking about preview a page at a time, or about being able to preview the entire site as it will be built?
Preview would be the page at a time. So as you're editing, basically what happens is actually they did a demo of this at Decoupled days, I think, where as they were typing in the edit, they save, and then the other browser tab refreshed with the new content in there. So you can actually see you can actually see the content that's doing there, and then once you save it and then push it out to the incremental build, then it gets the whole site. But you wouldn't be able to like preview a page. You actually can click other pages in that preview thing, but you would just lose that hook of what you're trying to see, what the change is there for you.
Yeah. Then now you have a new problem because you need to run that Gatsby on develop either on your local machine, but then your Drupal entry should be on your local machine to connect the local Gatsby. So that's why Gatsby has its Gatsby preview service. And
But this seems to be ignoring one of the strengths of React, where theoretically you could type into your React editor forms and display the page alongside it.
You can certainly do that. Sally Young did a really good demo of something that she was doing for the Sci-Fi Channel or for Lullaby, where as she was typing, because with the Gatsby preview, the way they're doing it, you actually have to save, so it sends to the server. But with Sally's demo was as she was typing, it was updating the site, live,
Yeah.
which was, I thought, spectacular.
And Preston mentioned that the other day.
Yeah.
Is working. The Drupal, preview, they are working on the keystroke by Strato.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is happening in reality is, Drupal is sending the JSON, serialized version of the entity back to Gatsby, and they just got to be refreshed their, the GraphQL content, and then since the GraphQL query is feeding your Gatsby site, you can see the change reflected. So it's a matter of, but again, you need to have the Gatsby running either locally or using their service, and we're also working on some pretty similar stuff. So I'm really happy to show.
It's an interesting problem and a hard problem. I got to give you credit for even tackling it, to be honest with you. Because like Jekyll is just like, man, we don't care.
Just create a file.
Yeah. So someone actually said, when did our site turn into Mr. Hyde? Any other questions?
That's another question. How do you handle site-wide search in a Gatsby front-end site?
Right now, horribly. We're using Elasticsearch, and I think that we need to shove that off into a separate service that would be easier. Let somebody else do it. Because you saw when I was doing it with Jekyll, which was Elasticsearch as well. Basically, it's rewriting the JSON for the Elasticsearch. And right now, we actually have a bug where some people in some browsers, when they search, while it loads the search data, it just doesn't do it. It gives a white screen, and then until the search entity is completely loaded, which is a pretty big thing for our site, then it renders out the results. And I've yet to figure out why that's happening for us. So search using Elasticsearch. There's a Lunar, which is a solar index as well.
There's an elastic lunar.
Yeah, exactly. Elastic
But
Lunar.
since you are using Drupal for Drupal, you can do your choices here are, either whenever you save something in Drupal, index that whatever, like Algolia, that was great, or while you run Gatsby develop, Gatsby, fetch content from all different places, you can also re-index at that very moment. So it's up to you, either like from the original source and only, index certain data or the full site. But again, ideally just have that one index in an external service and use Gatsby as a GUI for the search.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to try when I first thought about search was having the JSON API endpoint of search in Drupal and pinging that and querying that. Turns out that doesn't work. Turns out that querying search outside of Drupal is a horrendous pain in the ass. And you should be able to just do a search query, you would think, and get just the content out. That's all I want. That's all I want.
As JSON that then you would then process.
Yeah, exactly. But no, you got to get the entire theme from Drupal. You don't get just the data whenever you do search. You get the entire thing. So
It seems like an opportunity for something to build, right?
Yeah. Actually, that would be a bad JSON API submodule to do for search.
Another thing so whatever, let's say like links, links extend like node / something. So at some point, when you are like fetching data from Drupal via JSON API, you can do the JSON handlers, how they call, for extending the output of the JSON fields. And like you can change the
Extras, JSON API extras.
and also you can change how JSON API serializes data from Drupal. So links, instead of saying node and node ID, you can change for the path alias. So then you use that alias for linking or creating redirection pages.
That is another thing that a problem that I forgot to write down because if you have something with a lot of content, your JSON API endpoints, there are a ton of them that nobody needs. There's a JSON API endpoint for your admin interface. No one needs that outside of your Drupal. So you use JSON API extras to turn all the stuff off that you're not using. But also don't turn off too much, because if you turn off taxonomies, then there's no access to them anymore. So you got to be wary of that. But you certainly don't need the blocks content searchable.
How do you manage menu items?
Manually. Menus. Menus is another pain. But also that your menu structure shouldn't change that much, in my opinion. You should have a static menu system where you can just write one quick module in your layout to do that. So, all right, folks, looks like that's time. Thank you very much for joining me. And the monkey presses the button.